Welcome to Soccer Talk, a podcast about soccer, mostly in Iowa, presented by Kick It Forward. Kick It Forward is a positive disruptor to the Iowa soccer community.
Thanks to our sponsors, Scott Insurance Services and Michael Keener, Attorney at Law. You need legal help, you need insurance help, those are the two to contact.
That's right. Welcome to the show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Iowa soccer supporters. I'm Ben Brackett, here with my good buddy and co-host, Blake Sievers. Siebes, what's up?
Good afternoon, Ben. Pretty excited for this little mini-series we've kind of created out of nowhere almost, right?
I would call it nowhere, yes. I'm going to give you credit for it, though. It's all your idea. You're the idea guy a lot of the time, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the idea guy. I'm quite a few things.
You're the weatherman.
That's right. The weatherman, the face.
Definitely the face. Well, another interview today where, if we're talking about your connections made this happen. If you never won a national championship playing for the Menace back in the early 2000s, we might not have had this connection.
Yeah, that's true. And we kind of like with Joe Berger, there's some old stories, and it was good to kind of connect. And you've known Casey for a long time.
We should maybe just mention who we're talking about.
Yeah, who are we talking to, right?
Yeah, so we're having Casey Mann. That's Mann with two N's on the show today. Casey is the executive director of the Nebraska State Soccer Association. An Omaha native, but has gotten there by way of some time in the Des Moines market as well. Went to Grandview, played for the Menace, coached for the Menace, won national championship with them back. What year was that, Blake?
Was it 2006? Six.
Okay.
Is that right?
I don't know. Regardless,
yeah.
2005 or 2006. Anyway, yeah, so good little chat. And, as so often happens on our pod, it kind of goes off on some different tangents. I think we really dig into that sort of competition versus development conversation today as well.
Yeah, it's exciting. So hopefully everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, let's get to it. All right. Welcome Casey Mann to the pod. What's up today, Casey?
Another day in paradise.
I'm excited to get to talk to you. It's been too long.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you guys.
I'm sure you've listened to
what you guys are doing. It's cool.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. I'm guessing based on that comment, you've probably listened to like all of our podcasts.
Everyone, I think.
All right. Well, so then you know what's coming.
The first
I do. Yeah.
What's the first question? Can we put you on the spot? It's the same question on all 60 plus episodes we've recorded, Casey. And it is, I'll help you out here. Is this your first time ever being on a pod?
Yes, I think maybe. Yeah.
It must be. If you have to think about it, it must be.
I think so.
Welcome. We'll be gentle.
All right.
So we're doing a little quarantine interview series, right? To just talk to the executive directors in kind of the immediate proximity. So we talked to Dan Cataldi at Iowa Soccer and Blake's boy Joe Berger down at Kansas Soccer. And Blake's using all his connections. He reached out to you and got you in the mix as well. So we're really excited to talk to you. We usually just start out after Blake asks his famous question and just give you a second to kind of tell us your origin story, give us an idea of kind of where you came from. And then, of course, touch on how you came through the Des Moines area and tell us how you got to where you are now.
Well, I'm originally from here. I ended up following a friend and played at Grandview.
Is here in Lincoln or Omaha?
Omaha.
Okay.
Grew up in Omaha.
Who'd you play for growing up?
Omaha.
What club?
It was Gladiator. There was a Blue Jay. I played for a few clubs. Club soccer was just sort of starting to kind of take off, but I played baseball and played every other sport too. So Gladiator was the time I had a coach, Chris Perone, who was kind of my first real taste of club soccer and serious club soccer, traveling and that kind of stuff. And then a couple guys I'd kind of flirted with a few schools, recruited at NAI and some of those, and went over to Grandview and had a really fun time at my recruiting trip, and ended up signing there. And
hold on a
minute.
There. Is it? Can you share any of
Did
those
they take
stories?
you out in downtown Des Moines or what?
Huh?
Did they take you out in downtown Des Moines?
Yeah, it was fun. It was that's all I'll say. It was fun.
Well, okay, so who was at Grandview at the time you were there?
Augie Gutierrez and Javier and those guys. It was there. Brian Zwaska, you had mentioned earlier. Those guys. It was a really cool senior class, so it was just fun, and felt it was kind of enjoyable. And I just knew I wanted to go play soccer, and Grandview was kind of a good mix of Des Moines was a good sized town. It was close to Omaha. It wasn't, out in the middle of nowhere, and it was competitive and it was a challenge. So went there and it worked. My freshman year, I ended up behind the starting goalkeeper, and I'm not sure what happened, but I ended up getting in and getting some games, and then got hooked up with Matt Kennedy, and sort of my goalkeeping career changed a little bit and took off and had some success and had some fun. And then the Menace came along. So that kind of started me on that path.
Yeah. I always liked watching you play in goal. You mentioned Kennedy. We haven't had Kennedy on yet, have we, Blake? And he's probably somebody that we need to have on at some point, but I don't know if he would even know how to work a Zoom call. So
no, yeah, you need to have an administrative assistant around or something.
Talk a little bit about being coached by him, because that's something we all share in common. And I know that.
I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel we were just talking about it. Like I think about it all the time. Like, I mean, he really
they don't make them like they used to.
No, he really did change everything about what I was, going on and going through. I mean, he made it personable and he cared about you. And I just think about that I think Blair, I'm not sure how I got hooked up with him, but for one summer between maybe my freshman year and sophomore and junior year, I mean, he trained me twice a day, never asked for money. It was, let's go at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. at that sand pit at Albert, and just train for an hour, then come back at 3 or 4 and then jump into practice. It was just, anytime I said, hey, can we train? He was like, let's do it. He would come, he'd bring me old t-shirts. And I mean, he was just, it was more about like, hey, I care about you, and I'm going to kick the crap out of you in training, and we're going to do it. And I don't know, it was just a really cool connection. It wasn't, like, okay, this is going to cost you $30 and we got to do this and this. And it was just, yeah, you want to train? Let's do it.
Was this, give us kind of a year, because this is before there was really any specialized goalkeeping training probably around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had some, Blair had, I think, tried to connect me with some other coaches in the area that were just doing some stuff, but it wasn't, I mean, how Matt is, didn't connect with me. It was, jumping over ropes and doing somersaults, where Matt was just plain old fundamentals and hard work. And it's amazing to see, because now I think that not only made me a better goalkeeper, but just a better goalkeeper coach, because it was so much in the fundamentals, and it was such a tricky position. And going off and coaching college and just seeing the difference and seeing the goalkeeper coaches who made it professionally, it was like Matt was teaching me that years ago. So it was sort of like I was, had access to not only the great training, but the great information to become a trainer. So.
Yeah, my college assistant coach we had a goalkeeper coach on the assistant staff. And he's the only person I've ever seen even like remotely close to what Kenny does on you, but obviously I never got coached by you as a goalkeeper. I was more, we were.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a difference between like goalkeeper guys, drills and things like that. And you can run and touch the post and dive, and someone who can actually break down the position. And that's what, like with Matt, it was, I think every day in the summer, I think it was sophomore and junior year, the first year of the Menace, it was every day at 8, it was just pumping soccer balls at me, just catching them over and over and working on footwork. It was versus sometimes some of the other guys that I would have, it was about like shooting on you, or like, how many somersaults you could do before you dove. It was Matt, it was just all fundamentals over and over and over and over again. And it was, I think just thinking about it now, it's priceless.
Was that a bit of a turning point for you as a goalkeeper?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was a self-taught goalkeeper. I didn't play goalkeeper until I got to high school. And the only reason I played in high school was because of varsity needed a backup, and it was a way to make varsity, and thought it was kind of cool to jump around trying to save PKs and in practice. And then, so it just kind of, I was athletic enough, I think, to survive the position. And then with Matt, it's just, you kind of refined everything. And kind of took off from there.
So how did that kind of inform you as a coach?
I just knew that it was all about, I mean, coaching was just about, you know, relationships and connections. And I mean, having the knowledge, I think you had to have the knowledge, and Matt had the knowledge more than probably anybody, like you guys had said, more than as much as anybody in the country. So it was the knowledge, but it was just also the, you know, the care, and especially with a position like goalkeeper, it's just so tough and so tricky, mentally challenging. You just sort of always felt that he was in your corner. Matt had a good way of being able to kind of yell at you, but, in a fun way, you know, like I think you guys have all experienced it. I mean, probably some of the phrases we can't say, but you know, I mean, he's the only guy I still remember some of the stuff he would say to his club team. You know, you run like you got a load in your diaper, and everybody would get the point and be cracking up. You know, I mean, it was sort of like he just, I don't know. I think he was that passion. I think just sort of sold itself on everybody.
Yeah, I think there was the
You could
balance.
probably run through a whole
Oh yeah, sorry, Ben.
a whole list of Kennedyisms.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
got the old. I've seen semi trucks turn faster. You know, and the ball gets played
Oh
into
yeah,
somebody.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
See
I
trees
remember
fall
that one.
faster.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think he found the balance
Yeah,
Go
of
ahead, Blake,
being,
though.
being demanding and like you said, Casey, carrying and like getting the correct message, but also being demanding, but not that there's that balance there, right? And he's clearly has it.
And at the
He's able to-
time too, I mean, how many guys could get out there and probably still outwork everyone that he was coaching? I mean, like he could go ask you to run that hill up Aliber and he would do it too. And then he'd go do 100 crunches and chase the dogs. And you're sort of like, you really had no excuse not to do it because he could do it. So
For
it
sure.
was cool. I was pretty lucky that way.
So after your time, I mean, you had a really good career with the Menace, and that kind of transitioned you into coaching locally, right?
Yeah, well, so there's a guy on the Menace when I was playing, a guy named Neil McGuire, who was an assistant at Iowa State at the time, and then he was moving to Arizona State, and so I followed him to be the goalkeeper coach at Arizona State.
I remember.
And
for
it
the
was cool. I
women's
moved to
women's
Phoenix.
program
It
in the
was-
Pac. Sorry, Casey. Women's program in the Pac-12, or was it probably the Pac-10 back then?
Yeah, I think it was Pac-10 back then. So that was in 99, maybe, I think. But I had just met Tanya, who I eventually, married. And so it was just kind of, I spent a season there. Then Neil had moved on and another assistant moved on. So it was just kind of not sure what to do. Moved back to Des Moines. Tanya and I got married. And then her former coach at Iowa State took the job at University of Arizona, and we had connections, so moved down there and became the full-time assistant at University of Arizona for a couple of years with that program. So I love being a part of a college campus, especially big campus like that. It was fun. But then we had Keegan, our first kid, and I was gone, just traveling, and it was we were at Oregon, at Cal, at Stanford, and it was just like, holy cow. Kind of all by ourselves in Tucson. So moved back to Des Moines and ended up coaching with Matt in the academy.
Well, look what we got. We got a little visit. Speaking of kids.
All right.
So your kids are like teenagers now, right?
I got 4 kids. Yes, I got 2 teenagers and 2 young ones. It sounds like yours is barking.
I was gonna say, like, talk about timing.
It's not very well behaved.
Yeah.
You mentioned the early hour. He likes to have maybe about 100 throws before 9 a.m. and we haven't quite achieved that yet.
Yeah, we just got a dog too. Thinking this whole quarantine thing, we bought into it and got a dog, and it'll be great for our kids. And my 12-year-old, he's a bit of a turd himself, and so like the other day, it's the dog poops in his room as he's playing video games, and we're like, Kellen, you gonna clean it up? So he just picks it up and throws it in his trash can. We're like, this isn't teaching the lessons it's supposed to. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but so kids responsibilities, yeah.
So where do you? I forget about. I do now that you said. I do remember you were down in Arizona and whatnot, but I forgot about that. So where do you end up after Arizona?
I came back here. I think Dowling had a job opening for the girls, so I took the Dowling girls job, and then was coaching with Matt and got involved in ODP. It was just that's where I'd come from. That's where Tanya had come from. So we had connections, and she could jump back into teaching. It was closer to home, and then I think I spent a couple of years with Dowling, and then the Menace opportunity came along, and I took that and sort of went with it from there.
Yeah, that was what about that one? Like that was like a winning the national championship. Was that up there on your like top coaching accomplishments?
Yeah, I mean it's the top. It was amazing. I think it's also a pretty tough standard to set when it's like everything in that season went just right. It just everything fell into place, and we battled all sorts of things with injuries, and then the next guy stepped up. But I sort of think it was a blessing and a curse because you win it your first year, and then I just remember people saying, "Oh man, it'd be so easy to win it from here on out," and it was like, not really.
Well, probably the first thing that you did was make sure that I didn't come back to Des Moines. Right?
I think I tried to get you back, but I think you're too busy studying. And I just remember trying to get the local Ben Brackett kid back, but he was sort of.
And I played this. Your predecessor was not a good coach.
That's right. You played. You came back and played, didn't you? And then you stayed out east, right?
Yeah, so like I'd come home that first summer and was like, nope, not doing that again. And you were like, come on, it'll be great. Like Blake's gonna play. Your boy Matt Wieland will be here. It'll be fun. And I was like, no chance. Not coming back to Des Moines. Not doing that again.
Well,
I guess you missed out.
You did, Ben. And after you kicked the coach out of his own practice, I don't know how you could live up to that lore either, Ben.
I don't think Casey would have fallen for those antics. I would have been the one taking a hike.
I heard stories.
Yeah. So Casey, just talk a little bit. I mean, because I remember playing. I remember that year. I mean, you talk about just the challenges. You kind of brought it up a little bit, but you're bringing guys. I mean, obviously everybody's good, but bring guys from all over that are in town for a week, and then maybe have to go out of town for a weekend, or they're only in town for part of the summer and have to go back to school. Talk about just kind of the challenges of bringing. I mean, I think we maybe had like 40 some guys throughout the year at training, right?
Yeah. And maybe I can't speak historically, but I don't know if it wasn't necessarily like something that I sought out all along when I got the job, but I just remember, going through the PDL, knowing what it was. And I think one of the first things that I did when I got the job is I went over and I met Bob Warming and watched Creighton's training session in the spring. And it was just like, they were just playing these 10-minute games of like 77. And it was just super competitive. The coaches were like, one more game, we're not leaving. And it was just, and so I just sort of took that. I just remember that memory is like frozen in my head. Like, I just want to make it competitive. I just want to, like, you got to keep your way on the field. And then I just don't, I mean, like you said, Blake, there's just, players come and go all the time. And so I just have 22 guys and just try to survive a season with that was going to be impossible. So I just, we'll have 30 guys. I'm not going to make practices complicated. There'll be a big technical portion to it, but then we're just going to play. We're just going to play small-sided games and have small-sided, tournaments, and everybody's going to get a workout. And if you are good enough to get in the 18 that weekend, you're good enough to get in the 18. And, I think there were guys, at times we'd have, like 4 or 5 apartments of, a couple rooms, and just bring in guys and let them sleep on the couch and whatever. You got to earn your way in. And I think that helped kind of create some of the foundation of just, this is simple but competitive.
I feel like the relationship approach that we've kind of talked about, did that help you that summer?
Yeah. I mean, I think because I knew those guys, and I mean, again, I also think it was just sort of, it was really cool because we had a lot of local guys. And I mean, coming from you guys, we all had the same connections through Matt and everybody. So we all knew each other. So I wasn't going to come in. I still remember this too, Blake. Like, I wasn't going to come in and wear a suit and tie and this kind of stuff. And I think, Blake, you told me, like, if you wear a suit and tie, I'm not playing for you. Like, and I was like, I didn't even own a suit and tie. It was just like, I'm not going to come in and try to sort of be Pep Guardiola. And it's just, what, you guys, this is what we're going to do. And we just, worked hard and outworked everybody and played. So it was,
I think that's that summer soccer, if you're playing in college, that's all you want is you just want to play and compete and know that you're going to be ready when you get back in the fall.
Yeah. I mean, the PDL it's at the time, maybe it's different, but it's
changed a lot.
You couldn't really scout a whole lot of people because you only played your conference and there wasn't a whole lot to scout. So you couldn't trade game tape. So there wasn't a whole lot to get overworked about. And I just felt like, we had enough talent and enough resources that if we could just outwork everybody, we could see what happened. And I mean, especially that first year, I just think that we had tons and tons of local guys from Grandview and Drake, and I mean the connections. So in one way, shape, or form, people just stepped up, and we just kept plugging the holes and kept finding a way. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, here's a little.
I remember. Sorry, Ben. I was just saying. I remember.
Go for it. Your story's gonna be better.
No, I just had a great story. I just remember. Literally, we as a group. I mean, you had Sun Prairie Apartments. It's like you said. We didn't. Everything was competitive, and then, we're not sitting there going through a 30-minute session on how to run like a back three or whatnot. A tactical session. So, because I mean, everybody knew how to play soccer, right? And for the most part, like you said, Casey, there was some really good players. And so having that competitive environment was, I mean, that's what I remember. Every day you show up and you'd play and you'd battle and like you'd kick the shit out of the guy next to you, but then you'd go, you'd go that night out to Sun Prairie Apartments and bond and get in a little bit of trouble and whatnot. But I mean, I think that's what also brought brought us together a little bit. So I know that's the thing is just the competitive of every session was competitive, and then off the field, you're battling the guy that's for your position. But I think there's a mutual respect, and the way just things were run was like perfect.
I just sort of, if there's anything, probably the most thing that I was proud of is that we just sort of, I tried not to be somebody I wasn't, and we tried to just keep it simple but competitive. And I mean, I think it worked. And I mean, especially when you think about like, you can have all the biggest game plans in the world that you want, but when you got to go and spend 12 hours on a bus to Thunder Bay, and it's like the referee and the coach are hanging out before the game, having a cigarette, I think you just got to find a way to win. And I mean, you've been there. It's like you got punched in the face and you get the red card kind of thing. So, I mean, it's just, it's at the end of the day, how bad you want to win, I think that group especially just kind of found a way, especially like the Open Cup games. I thought that run was pretty cool too.
Yeah. Can you, Casey, cool. I'll let Ben, I got one last question on that. I've heard some stories, and you mentioned that you did not own a suit, but in the final you had a suit on. So is there a good story behind that?
Honestly, I cannot remember where I got that suit. Like, I don't know if I had to borrow it from somebody. I know I didn't know how to tie a tie. I think so. I forget who. I think Al Oatsfall, the GM, tied the tie for me.
How on earth could you have borrowed a suit? You're like 6'4".
I think
it didn't fit, Ben. Ben, it didn't fit.
I think I had a nice pair of pants.
It was so big, Ben. That's what I remember. Like, it was one of those
7-footer.
Yeah, one of those baggy suit jackets, and the shirt was all baggy, and the arms were
it was like
long.
99 degrees in El Paso, and it's like, really, this is the only time you're gonna make me wear a suit. Like,
did Kyle request it?
No, the league did actually, because the other coach had to as well. Like, 'cause it was on TV, it was on Fox Soccer or whatever, and so, because I remember in the locker room, all you guys were writing all over your T-shirts about, like, that was the time when Beckham had a T-shirt, whatever, hi, I'm David Beckham, and this is Fox Soccer or whatever. So I think Armin was writing, I'm Armin.
Yeah.
And was writing stuff. Everybody was writing all stuff. So everybody was all excited about it being on TV. So I think I don't think it was Kyle. I think it was a TV thing. Eventually, I think I had to wear slacks. Kyle said, yeah, you're going to quit wearing shorts and wear slacks. So, but I think I survived with a polo.
He looked like the Menace, intern
I think it's interesting
working the gate. He just jumps over on the sideline.
I just remember we played in Atlanta one time. Blake, I played the Open Cup, the Silverbacks, and I wore shorts, and their coach was like, "What's the deal? Like, how do you get away with that? Like, you're only let you wear shorts?" And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know any different. Like, he's like, "Man, I have to wear a suit." I'm like, tough being you. I don't know.
Then he got smashed by the coach in shorts and a polo, didn't he?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, what was cool about it, though, was like, that's who we were. It was like, there was nothing, again, I mean, I did think it was awkward. I don't want to, but it's 90 degrees. You're playing at Hoover High School and the guy's got a suit on. Like, I just felt me wearing a suit would have made it all about me instead of about you guys. Like, I don't know,
Yeah, I deal with this at work all the time, Casey. But it's a little bit different. I'm concerned that if I wear a suit and tie when it's hot like this, like which really looks more unprofessional, me looking nice in shorts and a polo, or me sopping wet and soaked in sweat because I'm wearing a suit and tie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know. I find occasionally I got one suit and tie, and we've done these like banquets now. We start these Hall of Fames, and I keep the tie tied. I just take it off and I use it again next year. And somebody finally called me out. I was like, "You wore that tie last year." I'm like, "Yeah, well, sorry."
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, I think that's a good segue. We're all about segues here. Kind of going from what would be, it sounds like maybe your most memorable or important, coaching accomplishment, where you were dealing with a singular group, one squad. And then now here you are kind of running all of Nebraska soccer. I got to imagine it's a total transition from being on the field to, I don't know, every time we've talked to you, you're sitting in your beige office with your file cabinets in the background. I would guess it's a little bit different.
It is. And it was, I'll say this is not as glamorous as it maybe sounds. Sometimes it can be a bit of a babysitting role, and, it's a little bit of a referee role, but I think it started for me. I guess how I ended up here was I was just, Tanya was working for the Menace at the time too. So it was like all our stakes were with the Menace, and I had some kind of chances to follow, Amos and people like that, and connections to go maybe be a goalkeeper coach somewhere, like with the Minnesota Thunder at the time and that kind of stuff. And it was just like, we weren't going to uproot our family again. And we were all our stakes were with the Menace. And I was then going from coaching. And so like when Keegan was born, we'd have a babysitter, and then we'd have a babysitter relieve the babysitter. And so I was getting home at night, and he'd be in bed, and I hadn't seen him. And I'm sort of like, I'm spending all my time with everybody else's kids. This is sort of crazy. And I was worried that I was getting to be part of the problem as, a paid coach and that kind of stuff. So there was just this, you'd show up at the fields and there'd be a little bit of guilt, number one, that you weren't with your kids, you were with everybody else's kids, and that you were charging all this money to pay for play soccer model. And so, the Nebraska DOC job opened up, and it was just a chance to move home. So I took that, and I really liked that opportunity because I think, Ian Bradley, Sean Holmes, guys like that set a good foundation for like leadership. And I always viewed the DOC job as kind of a chance to kind of set the culture, not so much the coaching licenses are great, but what does this mean? What can we do? What's right? How do we bring people together? And then at the time, so I spent about 4 years as a DOC, and then we didn't have a state league. We had some independently run leagues and kind of had some challenges with those. So we were able to start a state league. And then the guy who was the ED, he took over the league, and then I just transitioned into the executive director role. And I'll be honest with you, I was nervous as can be because, like I said, I'm a person who doesn't own a suit and tie and that kind of stuff, and now running a business. So, but I walked into a pretty fortunate situation with staff. I've got really good people around me and staff, so I can just focus on the soccer side of things. And I'm actually, pretty excited about being an executive director in the sense that I'm a soccer person. I'm not necessarily a business person. I'm a soccer person. And I feel like that's important, especially as U.S. youth grows. It's to have that soccer background, So that part of it's been kind of, interesting and exciting.
So how long have you been in the new role? Sorry, Blake. Our timing's off today.
4 to 5 years now. 2015 or 16. So
okay, go ahead, Blake.
No, I was to say, so let's get into kind of one of the reasons why you're here is like the COVID-19 and whatnot. Just talk to us kind of, what is it, June 24th, 5th, 6th, something like that. June 24th. Where you guys are at as a state soccer wise, the last 3 months or whatever, since I'm assuming mid-March, what you guys have been doing, and just kind of give us an update.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge, no different for us than from everybody. Everything kind of shut down right at the beginning of the spring. And so then everything was on hold. And then in Nebraska, they opened up baseball and softball. So that kind of threw a few challenges because tons of questions. And then we've got a good relationship with the city of Omaha. We manage their fields. So we were kind of, trying to support our, local governing bodies and then the governor and what they were doing. And we're, understood what was going on. I mean, we're in a pandemic, so it was, let's not be in a rush. Let's do this right. But then as I think baseball and softball came, everybody was kind of starting to ask questions. Why not soccer? Why not soccer? So there was this balance between being cautious but wanting to get outside. And then then they opened up volleyball, and that threw an even more of a curveball because it answered the questions of, well, hey, if we put enough pressure on the governor, they'll open up soccer. And then it came back that soccer was labeled a contact sport, same as football and wrestling. And so we were shut down for quite a while. So then we had to really start kind of focusing on our policies and the possible reality that we may not have tryouts. We may not be able to do anything until the fall. We may not even have a fall. We don't know what's going on. And then a couple of the clubs were able to identify that through directed health measures here in Nebraska, that they could operate like a kind of a health club and offer individual like private training. So that threw kind of another curveball in there. And then just 2 weeks ago, I think the governor came back and said, July 1st, soccer's back on, no restrictions, go for it. So it's been confusing, but I mean, I get it. It's confusing for those guys too, but we went from being shut down, planning all these return to play, these restrictions, to never mind, you're back. So
it is interesting. It seems to look an interesting conflict that you're stuck in the middle, right, Casey?
Yeah.
Because obviously you want to get back to play, but at the same time, safety's probably has to be like your number one concern.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it also highlighted the challenges. A lot of these clubs now, and this is, I think there's good in it and there's bad in it, but I mean, a lot of these clubs are businesses now, and so I mean, they're worried when they got shut down about. Sorry, we had somebody in my beige office. The mailman came, so sorry.
It's all right. Big time.
Yeah.
The mailman comes inside your house. That's weird.
Yeah. No, we actually share a small office with a landscaping company, so we don't have a really glamorous office. But
looks like you've got a window.
I know. I got a window outside to a landscaping
parking lot.
Yeah. I don't know where were we at. So
you're just kind of talking about the challenges and stuff, but I guess highlighting all of this to me would be the size of Nebraska. And then it also just sort of like where the populations are. Like obviously Omaha and Lincoln, are big soccer towns, but then after that, I couldn't tell you a single town in Nebraska that has like a good club or anything like that. Not because because I don't know, when you're from Des Moines, you don't necessarily travel past Omaha.
Yeah. I mean, well, and that's the challenge. That's the difference when like a club is a big club or a big facility is pressing the governor to open up. Is they're a specific entity. We're a state association that has to oversee Scotts Bluff, which is on the Wyoming border. In Omaha, South Sioux, Norfolk, Kearney, all that kind of stuff. And so it's different all across the board. And, so it was a challenge, but I think, and it's still going to be a challenge. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. At one point we thought the potential good out of it was that soccer could kind of come back local. Meaning, there's a lot of Omaha teams, just as I'm sure there's a lot of Des Moines teams that travel to Kansas City and want to play in Kansas City every single weekend. And it's like, when one starts to leave and then two starts to leave, it dilutes the competition a little bit here. So we thought that the more travel restrictions, the more, we could really kind of rope in our competitions here. And so we were hoping some good came out of it, but, I guess that remains to be seen.
Where are you guys at tryout wise, Casey? So like, just where are you guys at? Has it happened? Are they coming up? Give us some where you're at.
Yeah, so it's been a challenge to say the least. We at the time that we set the policies, we didn't even think that we were going to get physically out on the field. So we allowed a re-registration period for June, and then if you didn't want to re-register with your club, we just thought you could go somewhere in July, go sign elsewhere. But there's just been all sorts of, now with some of the clubs sort of opening up under directed health measures and trying to do sessions, it's just caused a kind of a bit of a circus and some challenges. So right now I guess you could say we're smack dab in the middle of the process of tryouts, and that was just giving the kids an opportunity and the clubs to re-sign who wanted directly to come back with them. And now we'll move into July where kids can move around if they're free agents. But I think on the whole, the tryouts is just too much chaos for kids playing soccer.
I think we wouldn't argue with you.
You know what? To me, it's the biggest. I wouldn't say. gotta be careful to say like sham, but it's sort of like, I mean, there's no loyalty in youth soccer as it is, and to me, it's just the biggest irony in it all. It's all we're about development, we're about development, we're about development. So then we're going to spend these 2 weeks and go, I'm going to cut the kids who I'm charged with developing to take the kids from the other club who I didn't develop. So it's, I don't know.
Well, we've talked about this, in many different settings, but like, is there what's a better way to do it?
You know what? I've just been starting to do some research with other states. I don't think there is a perfect way, but we're kind of contemplating just sort of a re-register, or June 1st for 13 and unders. Your season is done with this club. Here's your window. It's like a transfer window where you can leave. Here's a free transfer window, and here's a paid transfer window. Like in the winter, if you're just unhappy, you can make sure all your fees are paid up and move. But then in the summer, instead of having tryouts, you can just say, hey, I'm going to go from this club to this club, and clubs can offer training sessions and that sort of stuff. It just, we fought tooth and nail when I first got here as DOC, and that was a good thing. I mean, I think Iowa actually had a pretty decent process in the sense of they had bid day, like you had tryouts, and then you had to wait for the day to get a bid. Whereas here, when we did a survey, and there were stories where there'd be 20, 30 kids, 12-year-olds at a training session, and the coach would find the kids that they liked, pull them out and sign them while the kids are standing on the field crying because they didn't get signed. It was it was like a cattle market. Like, it was just crazy. So I think we try to put some sort of at least a little bit of humanity to it, but even then it's still, you're talking about 11, 12, 13-year-olds and this big traumatic experience of, oh my gosh, I gotta stop doing family vacations, and I gotta worry if I'm gonna make it, and I got it's just chaos. And I don't see that in every other sport that my kids play. There are tryouts, but it's just try to see if you make this team, not try out to see if I can one up the club across the street.
So maybe this is a little premature in our conversation, but it's something we definitely want to touch on, this sort of the difference between development versus competition. We talked a little bit about it before the conversation as well. So, I think I know where you stand, but how do you, in this situation where you're having kids try out and you're talking about developing the players and stuff, and, so, okay, like, I didn't feel like Blake developed me very well, so I'm going to go play for Casey. What about the kid that's playing for you right now, Casey, that's just like, maybe he's like not committed. He's not trying very hard. He's not doing all those things. Like, do you cut that kid, or like, how do you bring that into the fold as well? And then, like, ultimately, compare that to these other sports that your kids are playing. Like, why is it so different?
Well, to go back to the kid who, if they're not engaged, there's two things. I could yap on this forever, but I think it's our culture and our society. It's sort of like everybody puts their kids in a sport, at 8, 9, and 10. And if the kid isn't engaged, it's sort of like, well, they're not going to go pro, so I'm going to pull them out. And I think about, like, even me growing up, in high school, I remember my club coach, Chris Brown, was sort of like, you got to quit skateboarding and kind of get serious about this. And then, but if I wouldn't
skateboarding, huh?
I wasn't great by any means. It was just farting around and doing stuff. I just never, soccer was sort of something you did and you liked it, and I was competitive, but it was like, and so I think I get it if there's kids who are just not engaged, kids just, you can just tell right away, they're maybe not competitive, not into sports, whatever. But the kids, there's got to also be sort of, kind of a bigger on-ramp to allow kids to find whether they like it or not. Maybe it's the position they're playing, maybe it's the coach, maybe it's the team that they're on. So I don't know that there's a right, wrong answer. Ideally, it'd be a club had, kind of levels and options for all their kids and can move them around and work with them and have patience. But, I think clubs right now are big business, and there's just not a lot of room for patience. It's you can't afford to have a couple of kids on your team who, aren't getting it because you got to keep up with the neighbor.
I think, right. Ben, you part of that answer too is the money part of it, right? When kids are paying 15, 12, 13, 14, $2,000 a year, that adds a whole new level and aspect of it also.
And I think, there's, you mentioned, and I've mentioned it, that you compare it to my kids' other sports. I think that the coaching part of it is the difference that I've seen in the sports, like my kids in hockey and basketball. We've been pretty fortunate to have really good coaches in those sports, and they were parents who did it for free. Whereas here, there's a lot of ego behind and identity behind each club is associated by who their DOC is and that sort of thing. And so there's just a lot of, I think, ego behind it. I think that poses a challenge, but just like, for example, my 12-year-old Kellen, he's in hockey, and there's times that, we're traveling and we'll go into, he's on like a 4th level travel team. But we'll go to tournaments in Minnesota, and you do feel the pressure. It's sort of like, all right, Kellen, if you're not going to bust your ass, we're not going to keep doing this because this is costing a lot of money. And so it's kind of trying to find that balance too between all the money and staying with it and having patience.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. Sorry, you looked like you were going to speak. Your internet out there in Runnels is killing us. So then we sort of talk about the the development versus competition. I know when we were growing up, ODP was like the vehicle to be identified. It's not the case anymore. But so what, just kind of talk about the ODP program in Nebraska, and then just like player identification. Like, how are you getting, that kid from Omaha to the next level? Because I know, I don't think you guys have an academy team, right? And certainly not in the new.
Yeah, we don't anymore. So
yeah, you have in the new rollout. You guys got a
couple ECNL groups
booted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for us, like you send a kid to Shattuck or you send him down to Kansas City, right? Those are your options. What are you guys doing?
It's probably similar, but I think there's 2 components to that. Number one is, and this has been some of the frustration that I've had, is I just think sometimes just because you send one kid on to, and we've had kids. We've got a couple of kids who I think were at Real Salt Lake, and we've had kids in Sporting too. But just because you send 2 and 3 kids on to a DA doesn't necessarily mean things are going right. That could just mean that that's a really good soccer player who got found the right opportunity. I think it's just about what's the bigger, more, I think, quantity or, generic platform that you have, and how, healthy is that structure. So I just don't want to, we say the same thing about sort of like Nebraska. Well, if we have a team that win regionals, that means everything's right here. That may have meant we had a really good team, but if we have,
you did one time. At one time.
I know. I think I know. I think, was that you?
I was just one of 18 guys.
But that's sort of my point. Is like we had a guys from Iowa. Like, so is that really reflective of what's going on here in Nebraska? And if it
3 Iowa guys, come on.
If we're taking players from a whole bunch of teams and forming one team, that's great. But I don't necessarily always think that just because, so Nebraska, Ben Brackett's club team from won regionals. I don't know that the population of soccer players grew by 200 kids simply because of that. I think so. I think sometimes we get lost in the fact of, okay, we've had a kid, and we've had kids make it into the national team and that kind of stuff, but I think we all need to take a step back and figure out where they came from and what they did. And one of the kids who made the national team or was in the national team played multiple sports, and so what's our environment like here? And I think I just don't want to lose sight of that or get caught up in judging that, our ODP program has sent 7 kids on, and so everything is great. It's just, are we getting the right training? Are we getting the right connections? ODP here is no different than anybody else. We face all the same challenges. It used to be, it used to offer stuff that clubs couldn't. And now clubs offer so much, like I said, they're big business, that it can't offer that anymore. I think it still holds value in the sense that I always think there's going to be value in kids getting out of their sort of club environment where maybe they're the left back, and because they're traveling to Kansas City every weekend, they're only the left back, and maybe they get around a different ODP coach and different players and just a new kind of environment. And we have a lot of small communities that don't have super serious clubs that need the opportunity. But so I think there's a value for some sort of state program that brings people together. I just don't know if calling it ODP right now is necessarily the best thing. What we've done until the COVID hit was Omaha is the new pro team here, USL1 team, and we tried to partner with them so we could get some of their players involved and MIMS could train and some of the kids and that kind of stuff. So that kind of hit a delay, but we're hopeful that can come back.
That's pretty exciting for you guys.
I just think, I'm hopeful with the MLS and the USYS partnership that I think, some sort of state programming could connect. But the challenges with ODP always were the kids who liked it wanted more, but their club schedules were so busy. So it was, how do you find stuff to keep them entertained and engaged, and get competitions out of it while respecting the club schedules. So we'll see.
I'm curious, how do you foresee the partnership with Union Omaha working out with the state? What would be like the dream? Obviously it's early, but what would be the dream?
So they took a team, I forget what age group, down to San Antonio for kind of an inaugural USL Cup. So I would hope that they could help kind of oversee. We've even talked, like, an ideal is if we had a DOC. We're in the process of just starting to look for a DOC, but it would be like a DOC that's connected to their program, maybe an assistant coach or something like that, that kind of oversees just a training program that then finds a few competitions here and there that the kids can go to, but then it just sort of gets out of the way, and it really sort of sets a training program that all the clubs can buy into. And the first competition that we did, or that they did, all the clubs bought into it. They gave their best players, they encouraged their best players to go. They said, go be a part of this. And so I think there was potential there. So I think it's just more of, the clubs get involved in the training and support that way. And then there's sort of just a moderate schedule where the kids can get games and competition. And we had flirted with that years ago too. So I feel, the positive part of what we try to do in Nebraska is we've been close. It's just the longevity of it and the time and the commitment. A couple of years ago when Elmar was here at Creighton, he did the same thing. He was involved in ODP and took teams to Shattuck and got kids training. And we actually legitimately had, the top kids were coming out and playing, because who wouldn't want to, play for Elmar or play for Johnny Torres and that kind of stuff. So I think what we've got to do is find the connections to the, to the professionals here and use that to bring people together.
How did the trip for that youth team go? Was it a good experience?
Yeah, I think it went pretty well. I don't recall a whole lot. I don't recall the results or anything like that, but I think they did well and they held their own. I think it was just a really new environment, new event, but I just think that the general opportunity for them to kind of be around Mims and Jay Mims and, just experience a little bit of professionalism, kind of a new setting, new faces was important.
Cool. Next topic that we'd like to touch on is a big one for Iowa. Is just facilities. And this is one, you knew this question was coming. Here in Iowa, we're just kind of rounding the corner where we're going to have a full-size indoor facility in Bettendorf, one in the Des Moines area, and then one in Council Bluffs here in the next, call it year or so, 6 months to a year. It's a big deal, but also probably a long time coming. I know, Omaha's got at least one really nice indoor facility that we used to go travel to. What's it like in Nebraska, and how are you guys giving people kind of full, year-round opportunities versus kind of the dead period that we have here in Des Moines, where you just play futsal and train once a week for an hour in a gym?
Well, there's good and bad with that too, but I think so maybe it's the reverse, is that we have a couple clubs who have indoor facilities, but our outdoor complexes are we're really kind of struggling. So we are in desperate need of outdoor facilities and turf fields and turf facilities. So and a lot of the indoor facilities are club owned or city owned or community owned. So it's not, this just massive herd of people all over Omaha and Lincoln that just get to use it. It's a lot of club based. So it's good that they get to play year round, but we still need the outdoor facilities right now.
And obviously, Casey, he set you, he gave you all the softball right there. I thought you were gonna hit out of the park and be like, I can't wait for these mini pitches to come to Nebraska.
There you go.
Lost it, Ben. He had his chance.
Sorry, I swung and missed too, I guess.
I put a little special spin on it when I threw it. But we can talk about mini pitches, but realistically though, what are you doing? What can you do for more outdoor fields? Because I know, just from our experience with the mini pitches, when you're working with municipalities and parks and rec departments and school districts and stuff like that, they don't see it with a soccer lens at all.
No, I think it comes down to, so we manage the fields for the city of Omaha, and that's been so we manage Tranquility Park, and but you're right, any governing entity sort of, we're getting hammered all the time. The fields are terrible. Why aren't you fixing them up? It's, well, okay, do you want us to raise your fees to fix them up? Because right now, and then how much are you going to play at Tranquility when you're traveling to Lincoln or whatever? So there's tons of challenges. For us too, I think the other part of it is showing a community instead of a really fractured community where it's like, if Club A is going to invest in this facility, then Club B won't, because they don't like each other. And it's building a community to go to show people with money and interest that this is really going to benefit the community. We've tried to partner with other sports like 77 football to show this is really community based. But it's a challenge because, you're right. There, a lot of the cities, like what we talk about with our Parks and Rec, they're trying to do a lot of good things. And I think that's what we've talked about with the mini pitches, is they're trying to focus on spending money to help keep kids out of gangs and keep kids active in really tough parts of town. So it's that versus, fixing up a field for kids in, West Omaha who, are going to travel to Kansas City every weekend. It's not quite easy. So our biggest thing is just trying to build a community of support so we can start to talk about it and have these conversations and show that we would use it together.
That's kind of interesting. I mean, that's your role, isn't it? To kind of get these people at the table agreeing on to be amicable. And like, again, it's for the kids, right? Like that's ultimately what we want it for.
I mean, so we have the indoor facilities, but we don't have anything like county. So we haven't hosted regionals and that sort of stuff. And I think so, I mean, we need, that's our biggest goal, is to get a county kind of going.
So on that note, it sounds like that's a challenge. Are there what other challenges do you face, and does the state of Nebraska face soccer wise, if anything, other than facilities?
I mean, we face it every day, and that's just, number one, it's just trying to stay relevant. I mean, soccer it's such a massive landscape right now. It's so challenging. And I always liken it to, I think years ago when soccer was first starting, state associations were there to tell people how to play. Here's the framework. You need a player card, sort of here's all the rules, this kind of stuff, and guiding volunteer-based organizations. Now it's a big business where these guys are making, a lot of money, and there's a lot of money being generated. So state associations' role more is to be there to support and to just connect the resources that we can together and help. But, having said that, now there's US Club, and again, as a club's a big business, ODP is a perfect reflection. I just think of soccer in general. It used to be this really strong program that everybody sort of aspired to. Now it's just one of a million programs, and I don't know that they can offer anything that's extremely unique. So it's sort of every day in a state association, you wake up and figure out, okay, what do we got to do to help, and how can we still be, important? I think our biggest thing, I always circle back to it, it's community. What we can offer, USYS in general is 3 million, members. So we have the strength in numbers, and we can offer the community. We have the partnerships, like for us in Nebraska specifically, the connections with the city of Omaha and governing entities. We're a governing body, so we partner pretty closely with the high school association. So we can tie in networks that can go and trickle down and support our members. So it's, for us, community is always going to be the biggest thing. There's always going to be these offshoot organizations that can say, hey, we can pull 2 and 3 clubs, and we can start this little league where you as a paid DOC can see all your teams on one day, and this is great. But you're then talking 2 and 3 clubs still on the same thing over and over again, whereas we're talking, again, trying to figure out how to grow referees, how to provide coaching education, how to, help kids in Scottsbluff as much as in Omaha. And I think there's an important value in that bigger community.
You talk about kind of like the breadth of your role, which is pretty significant. And you said something that just jumped out to me. We were almost thinking about letting you off the hot seat, but now I'm curious. You mentioned
I live in the hot seat with this job.
Well, maybe we were just gonna turn the heat down a little bit for you at least.
Sure.
But so you mentioned that you guys oversee the High School Soccer Association. Is that right?
No, we don't. We've partnered with them. One of the things that we've done is try to.
Well, that's
kind of
significant, though.
Well, what we try to do is, and I've always, you guys, you played high school soccer. It was an important part of us growing up. So I've never felt comfortable with the divide of club versus high school. And, you
That's
know,
terrible.
I like high school soccer. I coached high school soccer. And talking years ago, like with Sean Holmes, and he was a big advocate for it. It was, you potentially played a different position. You played in front of your friends. It was it was important. So we came in and
for certain players, it gives you the opportunity to go from being like maybe a role player to like now you're a leader, and it gives you that, and you go from being a freshman to a senior where you start maybe not as a leader, but by the time you're a senior, you're like, one of the top 3 guys in the team just based on the fact that you're the oldest.
Well, you look at club soccer versus high school. Club is so rigid. You're on your you're a freshman, so you're on the U15 team. You can't move because you got 4 tournaments in Kansas City. Whereas you go play high school, and all of a sudden you're playing with 18-year-olds and guys 3 years older than you in a whole different world. So it's social. There's so many more things to it. Plus you've got the academic standards, the discipline standards that sometimes clubs don't have. I think. So when we came in, they had a new director here, and we tried to just partner and say, hey, we'll support, what do you need? And let's work together instead of it being, clubs know it all and the high schools don't. And, and just try to basically simply by a show say, hey, we're here to support. We want to support. Like what's been really cool is in Nebraska when a couple years ago, so every time Prep and South play in the high school state finals, one year I think there was 7,000 people at Creighton Stadium. They drew more than Creighton did, and it's like, who would not want to play in that? You can play in the biggest state cup game and you want, and it's going to be all parents. This was tons and tons and tons of kids. It was just really cool. I think it outdrew the high school football finals. So it's sort of like we got to embrace this instead of just sort of having these paid coaches walk around and say, well, we know more than this guy. Like,
yeah. Right. Well, so then how do you deal with, because you guys are just like us in that you do
spring
soccer, club soccer is fall sport, and high school soccer is spring sport. So that obviously that's not the way it is anywhere else. Do you find that as a challenge or?
It is, but it's been part of our life forever. So it's just,
you just accepted it.
We haven't known any different. And again, and maybe I'm wrong by this, but I think I try to understand the bigger picture of it, and it's not just about what clubs in Omaha want, and it can't just always be about, well, this is going to help us go win regionals. What's going to be the bigger and better picture for us all? Like, yes, so we could move high school soccer to the fall, and then everything now when we go, and we still may not win regionals, but if it took away more resources than it helped, because we don't have necessarily the facilities maybe to run high school soccer in the fall. So just I'll just say that being in this sort of governing position, you understand that there's way more to the story than just the appearance. And it's not just easy to snap your fingers and go, let's move high school soccer to the fall. And then everybody's happy and boom, it's all done.
Yeah. That goes back to your, like the breadth of your role. It's you get a chance to think about the top, 1% of players, but you also have to think about the bottom 10% or whatever too, that,
and for a lot of these schools, where are you gonna play a game if you're sharing a football facility? And yes, you can play at train. We could maybe have one location for all high school games, but then you're talking kids jumping on a bus and leaving school early. there's I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the way we've grown up, and it is what it is, and so it's part of it.
Now, when you talk about the logistics and you talk about fields and facilities and travel and all that stuff, and, even in some situations, probably the population in the school, the student body probably can't support a football team in the fall and a soccer team in the fall. So,
that, and you're talking, you got college soccer too. So you got some of your referees are going to be you're sort of busy too. And again, it's just, I think it's important to try to create a consistent platform. The thing that I don't like, and I don't think it matters what season, is just simply, when they go off to high school soccer, then they come back, and the club coaches think they got to retrain the heck out of them and run them to death and get them back into club shape and stuff like that. So in an ideal world, it doesn't matter what calendar it is. It would matter that the clubs and the high school coaches either were intertwined because some of the club coaches were high school coaches, or they would sit down and work out calendars together so that they knew that the club coaches could embrace, my kids are going off to high school, they're going to get this, so I'm not going to have to retrain them or fix them and this kind of stuff, and then just overtax them and overwork them.
So by supporting the high school group, are you able to try and, push the club and high school guys together a little bit and get them to collaborate?
We've tried. I feel like this is where Iowa, I don't know what's going on now, but what was ahead of us at the time. I just remember, like speaking of Kennedy, like they would there was high school and coaches that would do sessions. I thought, someone like Sean Holmes was really good at, sort of laying the foundation of the culture of going and talking to a lot of people and bringing people together so they could share resources. We've tried to, and we're starting to, but it's still been kind of hit and miss. So I don't know.
I think it's encouraging to hear that you're trying it.
Yeah, and it's just, again, sharing resources. Like, I mean, especially with this whole COVID stuff, high school was gonna not necessarily take the lead, but they got information first from some of the CDC about, washing soccer balls and some of the programs that they were going to do, because they were dealing right in the middle of their season. So, it's nice to share resources. But again, it's at the end of the day, I keep going back to it's about the kids, and especially when prep played South and there's 7,000-8,000 kids there. Why would you want to take that away from a kid?
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's interesting challenge for a Midwest state like Nebraska or Iowa.
It is, but again, I just, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm blabbering, but I just think the whole premise of, well, this is going to help us win regionals it's sort of a shallow. I mean, what's going to help more kids play soccer? What's going to help more kids be excited about playing soccer, have fun playing soccer, want to stick with soccer versus 18 kids that are going to go off and win one every now and then.
It's such an interesting kind of catch-22. Like you want to push this, or at least I do. The idea that winning and being competitive matters. More, if not, at least as much as development. But then at the same time, like, winning doesn't matter at all, really, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you win regionals when you're 16 or 18. It doesn't matter if you won state cup when you're 11. Really,
well,
unless you learn something about winning at that time, I guess.
Well, I think it's the winning is in context. Like, and this is the risk that we take in Iowa and Nebraska is that let's say we move high school and we get and you put one glamorous team together, and there's nobody to play here in Omaha and Iowa, and so they're in Kansas City every weekend, and you're talking about more costs and more challenges, and the kids aren't really connected. They're missing homecomings. They're just missing. And then they go off and maybe they win regionals. I think it's how do we as a state association create it so it's a challenge to even win state cup, because we can put together the best team in the world, but when you go play in Michigan and Illinois, the challenges for them to even get out of state cup are also always going to prepare them a little bit more than what we have here. So I think it's how do you, not so much how do you form a team that can go win this competition. I think it's how do you make it winning a challenge here. And I think that's what high school has a bit of an appeal to it too, because the talent maybe from the clubs is dispersed. So maybe it's, you've got Ankeny and Dowling and Valley and this kind of stuff. So you're going to get more, sort of equal-minded games than having one club team. I mean, for no different than Iowa, I think Nebraska, the older age groups, you're talking 2 to 3 teams per age group as far as like quality and depth. We don't have the population. So how do we, if we can continue to grow the sport at the base, then you're talking better games. But right now it's sort of the same, factory belt thing. You get a couple of good teams, a couple of players leave, they go, you get one strong team, they leave the state, they're in Kansas City every weekend. And it's just sort of the same old. How do we keep this top 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids here playing? And so when they're showing up on weeknights and they're getting really good games and they're happy and content. So I do think winning is a part of it, but I think it's got to be winning locally too. And the competition has to be here locally.
Yeah, I like that.
It's just an interesting conversation. You're never gonna, as logical as that all sounds, you're never gonna be able to please everybody with that, are you?
Because it's a business, and it's more sexy to say, look at where we've gone, and this is where maybe parents can be a bit goofy at times, but it's coaches too. It's like, we travel, we're doing this, we're going to Phoenix, we're going to North Carolina, we're going to this. Look at how and there's people are like, wow, geez Louise, and it's okay, great, but if you still can't kick a ball with your left foot, what's it? It's a business, and they got to sell it, and it's not exciting and necessarily always sexy to sell. We're just content to grow the game here. We got to one up everybody.
Challenging times.
It's a massive landscape.
Well, so this is maybe then kind of our good kind of wrap up segue. Just what are your sort of challenges over the next 5 years? How do you see the future of Nebraska soccer and the future of your role? how do you see it, and how do you see it changing?
Well, I mean, I think some of it is going to just be, I think it's become a little bit more of an administrative role in the sense of pushing down like the concussion policies, the safe sport policies. So I think it's just going to continue to be an educational and support role, and connection. I think the challenges we're going to face are, it's just constantly figuring out the policies that work. Because like right now, these, specifically what we're dealing with is the recruiting policies. I mean, it's almost impossible to have recruiting policies and to implement them, because what you're doing is you're putting families in a tough spot by asking them to tell on another coach and find evidence, and you're talking about these hearings and all that kind of stuff, especially with Facebook and social media, all that kind of stuff. So we try to have policies or not have policies, and then the fear and the protection of our players and coaches, are going to steal each other, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's, for us, is trying to figure out the balance of, I think people want structure and want rules, but they don't want too much, and they don't want it to hinder them, and it's got to make sense. So.
Yeah, it'll be, and I think the COVID throws a whole another wrench in everything. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it plays out in the fall,
sure.
let alone the next couple of years. So, well,
Yeah,
that was good.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, Casey, we appreciate it.
You guys get back to your kids and your dog and enjoy parenthood.
Awesome. Thanks again, Casey.
Yep. See you later.
See ya.
All right, Blake, another excellent interview. It's fun to talk to people, but always fun to talk to people you haven't spoken to in a while, right? I feel like
absolutely.
It's like just jumping back in the room with them.
It is. Yeah, it was good. I mean, we made fun of him a little bit for his hairdo and whatnot. But no, it was good. And it's pretty interesting to see what other states are doing, how they operate and whatnot. I think so. I found that pretty fascinating, interesting. Hopefully the listeners did as well.
Yeah. The comparison, this being our third of three, comparison between Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa makes it very clear that they approach things a little bit differently. And while they, each Dan, Joe, and Casey all have the same, title effectively, it seems like they all have sort of a different role, or a different role has developed in their state.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of shows, right? There's not, which is the issue, part of the issue. Yeah, there's no one way to approach youth soccer.
No, that's for sure. And I mean, maybe part of the problem with that, or part of that becomes the problem, is because there's just so many ways forward, and that's why we get so spread out, and everybody kind of thinks they have the answer, but not everybody can have the answer. Can they?
I'd agree. They can't, unfortunately.
Well, fair enough.
So, but yeah, no, that was a fun little mini series, or whatever you want to call that. It's like a.
Yep. Well, let's thank Casey one more time. Casey, appreciate all your time and energy chatting with us, and we look forward to putting some mini pitches in Omaha, hopefully.
Love it.
You think anybody's still listening?
We'll find out, because if you are, visit us on social media, on Facebook at Kick It Forward IA, on Twitter at kick_forward, on Instagram at kick.it.forward, and on YouTube, search Kick It Forward, and then kind of it's fizzled out a little bit. Our TikTok page is at kick.it.forward also.
Yeah. The TikTok, we just don't
have
any stars. We don't have any stars.
Well.
No stars.
We tried, Ben. I thought your little cameo was pretty good, but what do I know?
Yeah, I think maybe one of these times, maybe for our next interview, we talked about some good ideas, but maybe for our next one, we'll have to, like maybe have a giveaway at the end of the episode or something, just see if anybody listens.
We're gonna do it. So here's the.
Oh, is this
series right now?
Ooh, okay. So what are we gonna give away?
Yeah. So we can't tell them next episode, listen to the end. We're just gonna see who listens till the end.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
So it's a surprise.
All right. Well, we taking bets on whether or not Matt Reams wins the surprise?
We'll find out. I would guess he'd be one of them.
All right. Well, thanks everybody
One
for
of the two
listening.
people that are going to listen.
Well, who is the second one?
Me. I just like to review it.
We know Sahig's not listening. All right. Well, good to chat with you as always, Siebes. This is where we cue up the guitar, right?
That's right. Go.
See you next week.
Here we go.